All right, I'm going to focus on a couple things from Delta Math that you're going to have to work through. I want to look at the specific skills called Trig graph discoveries. And it has 4 different levels, so I'll do a couple from each level so you can see the increasing difficultiness of them, okay? So let's start with a basic one. What you want to do is you'll see the default cosine or sine graph in bold. And we want to get it to look like the dashed one, okay? Now you can play around with it. It's not going to let you submit it until you get it right anyway. But what we want to do is we want to first look at the midline. I think the midline's probably the first thing you want to identify. So if you look at the max and the min, it bottoms out at -2 and it tops out at -4. If you go up 3, you're at 1, and if you go up another 3, you're at 4. So 1 is your midline. So you want to do +1 at the end. Y = 1 is your midline. So you click try, and that'll shift it up, but you're still not done. You gotta increase that overall height, and that's the amplitude. So from the midline, how high does it need to go? Now it goes up to a maximum of 4, but remember your midline's at 1, so your amplitude would be the difference between 4 and 1. So that would be 3. So let's try that. Now it says you can submit it, because I didn't change anything with the B value there. And honestly, these level 1 problems won't do that, okay? It'll just be X. Okay, we'll mess with the period later. But that's a correct graph, so go ahead and submit that. And let's do another one. Okay, on this problem, the midline has been shifted down. So from 0, it goes down 1, 2, -3, -4, -5. So between -1 and -5, it looks like -3 is my midline. So I want to put -3 at the end. And it has a distance of 2 going up to -1 and 2 going down to -5. So that amplitude would be 2. Now I'm not going to deal with the B value here. I'm just going to click try. And nice, it lets me submit it. So that's basically identifying the midline and amplitude for the first level. Now let's pick that up on level 2. Okay, level 2 is going to involve more reflections. So if you look at the dashed line here, you know, that midline is going to be at 1. And it goes up to 2, so the amplitude is going to be 1. But if I click try, it's not going to let me submit it because it looks like it's being reflected over that x-axis. So I want to put a negative out front. Now it doesn't change the amplitude, but it will reflect it and allow you to match up with that graph. So a negative will reflect it. We'll go ahead and click submit. Let's do another problem. Now in this graph, looks like it's just shifted upwards. It doesn't look like it's reflected. So let's look at the midline. That midline would be 4. And it's got an amplitude of 1, so we'll put a 1 there. There you go, 1 times cosine of x. Now you don't need the 1 there, but that's how you do that. So that's the level 2 stuff. All right, let's hit up level 3. All right, on level 3, it's got a midline of 2, goes up to 5. So its amplitude would be 3. Now, if I click try, it's not going to let me submit that because notice that this graph happens to be narrower. So this is the first one I actually have to do a little bit of solving on. So what I want to do to figure out how narrow that could go, you can guess and check. You can put 2 there. Okay, I got lucky, but I guess in another problem I'll show you what to do. So if you look at the graph, I'll show you why the 2 exists. So if you look at the midline, you go up, down, down, and up. Its period is at pi. Now remember, the formula for b is 2 pi over the period. So if my period is equal to pi, I would do 2 pi divided by pi. Cancel out those pi's, and that b value should just be 2. So that's why the 2 worked in this problem. Let's do another problem. Now let's try to figure out what that number is before we guess. So let's do the midline and amplitude first. The midline is at -2, so that's that last number. The amplitude is just going up 1 and down 1, so the amplitude would be 1. And I'm going to click try, and that's not going to be right. But I want to get it to be narrower. So let's look at the period first. So it's a cosine because it starts at the max, goes back down, back up, and it stops right here at pi over 3. Pi over 3. So to get that b value, I'm going to do 2 pi divided by pi over 3. 2 pi divided by pi over 3. Well, we can figure that out using a calculator, or we can do a couple tricks to multiply fractions. So 2 pi divided by pi over 3, if you keep change flip, is the same thing as 2 pi times 3 over pi. And you can cancel out the pi's, and you get 2 times 3, which is 6. If you're a little bit iffy on that portion of the solving, then you can do that in just the regular Desmos calculator. 2 pi divided by, and then we're going to, in parentheses, put pi divided by 3. And you can verify that that does give you 6 on this problem here. So since I know that the answer is 6 for that, I can go ahead and put 6 in here, click try, and see how it shrinks it down. Perfect. Now it doesn't give you the work for that, so that's something I want to make sure I showed you. Let me give you a new problem here. All right, this will be the last one I do on level 3, and then I'll go on to level 4. So level 3, let's look at the midline. It's got a midline of 0, so there would be nothing added. We can put a 0 there. It goes up to 1, and it gets, oops, I'm doing the original problem. Let's look at the dashed line. It's got a midline of -3. Okay, it goes up to -2, down to -4, so its max will be, its amplitude would be 1. But it does get, let's see, right here at 10 pi is when it starts over. So to get your b value, you're going to do 2 pi divided by 10 pi. You can cancel the pi's out since they're both in there, and that's 2 out of 10. And you can reduce that fraction to 1 out of 5, or you can use a calculator and get that if you want to reduce it, if you're not sure how. So 1 out of 5 would be your b value. So I'm going to put 1 divided by 5 and click try. Nice. All right, let's look at level 4 so we can be finished with these trig graph discoveries. Okay, level 4, look at the x-axis, and you'll notice that the numbers don't have pi in them, so they're going to be a little bit more involved typing it into the b value here. But let's get the midline and amplitude first. The midline here for this dashed one is at -2. The amplitude is still going to be at 1, so we can click try and get it down to that point. Now, as far as figuring out where it looks, we still got to identify what is the period. So it starts at the midline, it's a sine, goes back up, down here, right there, it's at the midline again. That x value is 4. So how do I get the b value? Well, if the period is 4, b is going to be 2 pi divided by 4. Now we can't put pi as a decimal in this, so we just want to reduce the 2/4. It's like converting from a degree to radian. Just reduce the fraction. That's going to be 1/2 pi. We're really just going to write pi over 2 on this problem. So your b value should be pi over 2. Sometimes b's have pi's in them. So in this case, you'll click pi divided by 2, and that'll be the number that multiplies by x. Let's try it. And I'm not done yet. So what happened? Well, if you notice, it starts at the midline and it's going down instead of up. So it's going to be reflected. That means you need a negative out front. All right, now we're good. Now we're good. Let's do 1 or 2 more of these, and then you'll see the level 4 worked out. Okay, for this problem here, it's got a midline. Let's see, it goes up to 3, down to -5. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Its midline should be -1. And 4 is the magic number for your amplitude. So if we click 4 there and click try, we can get it into that position. Now it doesn't look like it's reflected, but it is widened out. So let's look at the dashed line starting at -1, going up, down, down, and up. It looks like here is where it repeats its cycle at 4 pi. The b value would be, so the period is 4 pi. B is always 2 pi over whatever that period is. Well, in this case, it has a pi in the period. So that'll cancel out, and that'll be 2 over 4, which is 1/2. So b in this case is 0.5 or 1/2. We'll just write 1 over 2. Click try and see what it does. And it matches. Nice. All right, one more here. I know I said I was going to wrap it up in the last one, but I want to do this one too. So let's see. The new problem has a midline of -2, goes up to +1, so that's an amplitude of 3. Doesn't look like it's being reflected because it's going up first. So let's figure out that b value. So it goes up, down, down, and up. 20 is the period. 20 is the period. So period. So that b value is going to be 2 pi over 20. Well, the pi doesn't cancel here, so we're going to leave that in there, but we do got to reduce 2 over 20, and 2 and 20 both divide by 2, so that's 1 out of 10. So we can just write pi divided by 10. That's your b value. So I'll type pi divided by 10. You could also click the pi button. And let's see what that does. All right, we got it. We got it. All right, that concludes these 4 levels right here, level 1, 2, 3, and 4. Thank you for watching.